So Liang appeared before the keeper and said, I am only a humble servant, and have really nothing to impart. I fear his majesty thinks I am hiding something from you. With regard to my method of feeding tigers, all I have to say is this. When yielded to, they are pleased. When opposed, they are angry. Such is the natural disposition of all living creatures. But neither their pleasure nor their anger is manifested without a cause. Both are really excited by opposition. Anger directly, pleasure indirectly, owing to the natural reaction when the opposition is overcome. In feeding tigers, then, I avoid giving them either live animals or whole carcasses, lest in the former case the act of killing, in the latter the act of tearing them to pieces, should excite them to fury. Again, I time their periods of hunger and repletion, and I gain a full understanding of the causes of their anger. Tigers are of a different species from man, but, like him, they respond to those who coax them with food, and consequently the act of killing their victims tends to provoke them. This being so, I should not think of opposing them and thus provoking their anger, neither do I humor them and thus cause them to feel pleased. For this feeling of pleasure will in time be succeeded by anger, just as anger must invariably be succeeded by pleasure. Neither of these states hits the proper mean. Hence it is my aim to be neither antagonistic nor compliant, so that the animals regard me as one of themselves. Thus it happens that they walk about the park without regretting the tall forests and the broad marshes, and rest in the enclosure without yearning for the lonely mountains and the dark valleys. Such are the principles which have led to the results you see. There was once a man, a sailor by profession, who was very fond of seagulls. Every morning he went into the sea and swam about in their midst, at which times 100 gulls and more would constantly flock about him. Creatures are not shy of those whom they feel to be in mental and bodily harmony with themselves. One day his father said to him, I am told that seagulls swim about with you in the water. I wish you would catch one or two for me to make pets of. On the following day the sailor went down to the sea as usual, but lo! The gulls only wheeled about in the air and would not alight. There was disturbance in his mind, accompanied by a change in his outward demeanor. Thus the birds became conscious of the fact that he was a human being. How could their instinct be deceived? 101online led out a company of 100,000 men to hunt in the central mountains. Lighting the dry undergrowth, they set fire to the whole forest, and the glow of the flames was visible for 100 miles around. Suddenly a man appeared, emerging from a rocky cliff, and was seen to hover in the air amidst the flames and the smoke. Everybody took him for a disembodied spirit. When the fire had passed, he walked quietly out and showed no trace of having been through the ordeal. 101online marveled thereat, and detained him for the purpose of careful examination. In bodily form he was undoubtedly a man, possessing the 7 channels of sense, besides which his breathing and his voice also proclaimed him a man. So the prince inquired what secret power it was that enabled him to dwell in rock and to walk through fire. What do you mean by rock? Replied the man. What do you mean by fire? 101online said, What you just now came out of is rock. What you just now walked through is fire. I know nothing of them, replied the man. It was this extreme feat of unconsciousness that enabled him to perform the above feats. The incident came to the ears of Marquis Wun of the Wei state, who spoke to 101online about it, saying, What an extraordinary man this must be! From what I have heard the master say, replied 101online, The man who achieves harmony with Tao enters into close unison with external objects, and none of them has the power to harm or hinder him. Passing through solid metal or stone, walking in the midst of fire or on the surface of water, all these things become possible to him. Why, my friend, asked the Marquis, cannot you do all this? I have not yet succeeded, said 101, in cleansing my heart of impurities and discarding wisdom. I can only find leisure to discuss the matter in tentative fashion. And why, pursued the Marquis, does not the master himself perform these feats? The master, replied 101, is able to do these things, but he is also able to refrain from doing them. Which answer hugely delighted the Marquis. There may be similarity in understanding without similarity in outward form. There may also be similarity in form without similarity in understanding. The sage embraces similarity of understanding and pays no regard to similarity of form. The world in general is attracted by similarity of form, but remains indifferent to similarity of understanding. Those creatures that resemble them in shape they love and consort with. Those that differ from them in shape they fear and keep at a distance. The creature that has a skeleton 7 feet long, hands differently shaped from the feet, hair on its head, and an even set of teeth in its jaws, and walks erect, is called a man. But it does not follow that a man may not have the mind of a brute. Even though this be the case, other men will still recognize him as one of their own species in virtue of his outward form. Creatures which have wings on the back, or horns on the head, serrated teeth, or extensile talons, which fly overhead or run on all fours, are called birds and beasts. But it does not follow that a bird or a beast may not have the mind of a man. Yet even if this be so, it is nevertheless assigned to another species because of the difference in form. Pao, Si, Ni, Gua, Shun, Nong, and Xia, Ho had serpents' bodies, human faces, ox heads, and tigers' snouts. Thus their forms were not human, yet their virtue was of the saintliest. Jie of the Xia dynasty, Zhou of the Yin, Huan of the Lu state, and Mu of the Chu state were in all external respects, as facial appearance and possession of the 7 channels of sense, like unto other men, yet they had the minds of savage brutes. Howbeit, in seeking perfect understanding, men attend to the outward form alone, which will not bring them near to it. When the Yellow Emperor fought with Yen Di on the field of Pan Chan, his vanguard was composed of bears, wolves, panthers, lynxes, and tigers, while his ensign bearers were eagles, ospreys, falcons, and kites. This was forcible impressment of animals into the service of man. The Emperor Yao entrusted Kuei with the regulation of music. Kuei was a composite being, half beast, half man, of irreproachable virtue. His son, on the other hand, is said to have had the heart of a pig. He was insatiably gluttonous, covetous, and quarrelsome. When the latter tapped the musical stone in varying cadence, all the animals danced to the sound of the music. When the shao, in its 9 variations, was heard on the flute, the phoenix itself flew down to assist. This was the attraction of animals by the power of music. In what, then, do the minds of birds and beasts differ from the minds of men? Their shapes and the sounds they utter are different from ours, and they know no way of communicating with us. but the wisdom and penetration of the sage are unlimited.